Hey guys, Tom Barclay here. So, like London buses turning up two at a time, Tottenham are about to sign two players for big money. Just off the back of the news of 55 million being spent on Mohamed Kudus of West Ham, they have now made a very quick move for Morgan Gibbs-White of Nottingham Forest. They're going to trigger his release clause for about £60 million. He's someone that Forest weren't looking to get rid of. It's not like they've got sort of major financial PSR issues. They're selling Anthony N'Langa to Newcastle for 55 million, which would have taken care of any of those problems if there were any on that front. This is not exactly one they were desperate to do, but because of that release clause in his contract, they can't do anything to stop it. And Tottenham is where he's headed. We understand that he's going to be having a medical within 24 hours, today being Thursday. I've just come back from Wimbledon tennis to do this video. And it's another big coup for Thomas Frank, for Spurs. More big spending. Between the two of them, it's 115 million. When you consider Matisse Tel came in for about 30, that takes it up obviously beyond that. And they might not even be done there. So exciting times, and I'll come on to it in a minute about where that sort of money potentially may have come from on that front. But yeah, number 10 is where Gibbs-White plays best. He's someone that I know, I've followed his career quite closely because he's made his way through the England youth ranks, and I used to be the Sun's under-21s reporter for 4 years, and now cover the senior team as of the last couple of years, of which he is now a senior international. I was at the City Ground just last month to watch Gibbs-White come on in quite a shock defeat actually for England against Senegal. And remember, the fans, they clearly love him at Forest. This will be a big blow from their perspective because the fans at the ground, who presumably a lot of them were Forest fans for obvious reasons, during that England match were crying for him, calling out for him to come off the bench and into the game. But he was a key part of the under-21 team that won the first under-21 Euros, the one that I covered back in 2023 in Georgia under Lee Carsley. They've obviously done it again this summer, but he was a key part of that team, regularly playing number 10 in that team. I seem to remember him scoring a goal, I think, in the semi-finals, but he was a key part of that team throughout. Yeah, I think he scored against Israel. And he's someone that I interviewed quite a few times during that period. One of the standout interviews from that period revealed something quite interesting about him. He is the godfather to Phil Foden's kids. The pair of them, Foden and Gibbs-White, whose partners are really close, they got to know each other really well through the England setup. They won the Under-17 World Cup together back in 2017. You know, England's youth team have had amazing success, or youth teams have had amazing success in the last nearly decade now, but that was the one, even though it wasn't the first, it was the first one that everyone really sort of took notice of. It had a lot of players who've gone on to be big names since in that squad, the likes of Mark Guehi, Emile Smith-Rowe, Conor Gallagher, Callum Hudson-Odoi, Jadon Sancho, and I think it was managed by Steve Cooper, the old Swansea and Forest manager. And yeah, the pair of them came very close. And actually, Man City were very interested in Gibbs-White earlier this summer. In the end, they went for Tijani Reinders, if I pronounce his name right, and Ryan Cherky instead. But he was someone that very much was on their list of targets. So shows you how highly rated and how much he's developed, really. Because it was a shock when Wolves sold him to Forest, however many years ago, because he was one of their most exciting players. But he obviously went for, it's not quite clear how much he cost. There was talk of 42 million at the time, which was a real sort of shock fee. And I remember actually asking him about that, and him a few years ago ahead of that under-21s tournament, and him saying, it's not me who pays the money. But either way, it was quite a lot at the time. But I think in the modern market, he's kind of gone on to justify it, proven by the fact that Spurs are going to spend 60 million on him now, which I think in the current climate isn't bad business. It really isn't. I mean, it just shows you how mad the market is now, that seemed like not a crazy figure. But whilst I have sort of my reservations about 55 million on Kudus, as much as his dribbling statistics and the fact that West Ham had a really difficult season last year are caveats, I think Gibbs-White, from what I've seen of him, is very solid, very, one of those 7 or 8 out of 10 players every week. And when you consider how much Tottenham last season were, obviously due to injuries to a certain extent or big extent, were so fluctuated with their performance so much, I feel having players who can be consistently relied upon, experienced players like Gibbs-White is now, are very welcome. I also remember from that interview, he talked about he's got this tattoo on his right hand. I think he's got a few, but at the time he just got this tattoo on his right hand, which goes which reads as "Why save the good stuff for later." And he explained, well, it's quite obvious really what he means by that. It's basically carpe diem, making the most of today, and that's what he seems to be doing with his playing career, having really, had that move out to Forest and built on his career there. He's now in a position where he knows what kind of player he is. He's really improved, particularly under Nuno, and is now going to be playing Champions League football once that deal goes through for Tottenham. Looking at some of his stats, he's got 18 goals and 29 assists in his Premier League career. But I feel like last season he really became a talisman for Forest. It's interesting. He's a number 10. It's a position that the Spurs were looking at, along with out wide. Obviously, Kudus is going to fit that role for winger. They looked at Eberici Eze. They still like him a lot. He's a really good player. But we understand that he's more keen on Arsenal if he's going to leave Palace, which is not a definite at the moment. And Gibbs-White was a very good alternative that they've looked at. What this means for the likes of James Maddison and other players in the squad will wait to be seen. I have been told that there's no sort of suggestion that Maddison's on his way out or anything at this stage, but it just feels like they've got a lot of players, and presumably Gibbs-White's signing to be a regular starter, you'd think, and particularly in that number 10 position. Maddison, by the way, who's obviously came off injured in that first leg against Bodo Glimt in the semi-finals with ligament damage. He posted an Instagram picture of him training, both running and kicking a ball at Hotspur Way, saying "back on the grass." I think today, which was a real boost to have him back. But yeah, just another really, really good signing, Gibbs-White. And it doesn't feel like they're going to be done there either. I mean, there will probably be players leaving. Just look at the numbers of this squad. It's got a massive amount of players at the moment. I still think you've got to look out for the likes of Richarlison, Yves Bissouma, see what happens to them. But, there's still interest in Johan Visser at Brentford. Can they keep hold of Christian Romero? It feels like there's more positive noises on that front at the moment. And just back to where sort of the money may have come from. Obviously, they're in the Champions League, Tottenham, which brings with it, a serious amount of money. But by all accounts, it does feel like they've needed investment of late. And Daniel Levy even has been on record about wanting investment in the last couple of years. There are sort of rumours of majority owners ENIC maybe supplying fresh investment, pumping more money in. And these moves, best part of 115 million on two players in Kudus and Gibbs-White, would suggest that maybe that money has been sourced. Either or it will be. We'll wait to see on that front if that is the case, or if it's going to be supplemented by sales or what. But either way, whatever the logic behind it, I think this is really, really good business for Spurs. I imagine Ange Postecoglou somewhere is watching with sort of raised eyebrows, having only brought in, let's be honest, Dominic Solanke in a permanent senior signing last summer, how he could have done with more experience, as exciting as some of the young players are that they brought in last time. It feels like, either way, unfortunate for Ange, but it feels like the club, if they're bringing in these two players, may have learnt from their, I think, mistakes of relying too heavily on youth players last season, albeit ones with lots of potential. And they're looking into bringing in real proven Premier League players, along with a proven Premier League manager in Thomas Frank. So a bit of a sort of change of pace from their perspective. Either way, before I melt in this really hot car on a very, very hot day in England, that wraps it up for Morgan Gibbs-White. So we wait to see whether he is confirmed as a Spurs player in the next couple of days. Cheers, guys. Let me know your thoughts. What do you think of Morgan Gibbs-White? Do you think he's a really good signing, or do you think he's not really a priority target? They should be looking for a holding midfielder. There's a lot of talk about that particular position, but we'll wait to see whether what happens on that front. But either way, let me know your thoughts on Morgan Gibbs-White. Cheers, guys.